The inside story of the world's greatest manhunt. We are the Spy-Fi guys, and this is Patriots Day. Welcome to the Spy-Fi guys, where we cover spy facts, spy fiction, and everything in between. I'm Christian.
And I'm Zach.
And today we have for you Patriots Day, the 2016 film about the Boston Marathon bombing.
Right. So this movie, I remember, was the original Too Soon movie.
Really?
Yeah, do you remember this?
I do not.
Only a couple months in my memory since the bombing, they announced that they were making the movie.
Really?
And then it
That I
came
did
out
not
3
remember.
years after the event itself.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
ridiculously soon.
What's the gap between... Well, okay. Actually, this is going to go back.
Mm-hmm.
The events and Breach, oh, that's 5 years, because that happened in like 2002. All right.
Sure. Well, and Breach is not a national tragedy.
True,
I'd be
true.
curious when the first 9/11 movie, like mainstream 9/11 movie, was. I don't
There
think it
was the
was 3
United...
years.
There was the like a United
Yeah,
flight... Which,
there was Flight 93.
yeah, I would call that mainstream.
Yeah, when did it come out though? Let's see.
Ooh,
It came out in
10 years?
2006.
Oh, oh
So
yeah,
it was a little
5
soon.
years.
Yeah. But then, of course, here's a little trivia for you, Christian. The
Sure.
original Too Soon movie was they made a Titanic movie like the same year that the Titanic sank with
Wow.
survivors of the Titanic as actors.
Oh, hold on. Yeah, okay. Let's see. Actually, let me call that, because there's also Back to Bataan, which is a World War II movie about the Bataan Death March, which had actual people who participated in the Bataan Death March in
Mhm.
it. That came out in 1945. The actual, 41 to 42 was the actual battle. 3 years.
Mm. So I
So
guess
not
this
not,
isn't.
not the same year, but still.
Yeah, this isn't the soonest movie, but certainly in our modern age, in my memory, the original Too Soon movie.
Interesting. That, yeah, I could see that. I didn't clock it. I mean, I knew that it came out in 2016 and the actual event happened in 2013, but I didn't clock that. Oh, that's very close. So they must have been in production probably at least the year before. So that's 2015. That's 2 years later. I don't know.
A couple things. How well
All
do
right.
you remember the Boston bombing?
That is an interesting question. So I remember that it happened. I
Mm-hmm.
remember that there was a manhunt, but I do not remember the results of it. I know that they found the people responsible, but I did not remember who they were nor what their motivations were. Which, in
Okay.
a way, I think is good because we're sort of remembering the people, the victims, as opposed to glorifying the people that carried it out. Except I do not looking back, I do have a recollection of the Rolling Stone cover.
Yes, I also thought of that, and I'm surprised it wasn't in the movie, but it also
Well,
makes sense.
I mean, because the movie ends at a certain point, and we'll get to it there. But that happens after, really, after so the storyline of our movie ends.
Hmm. Sure.
And they wouldn't want to bring that up again because I remember it was such a controversy putting him on there.
It's practically a whole movie in and of itself.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, even think about so this was what 11 years. I mean, if we had planned this out better, we maybe pushed it back to April on actual Patriots Day. But we
I
don't
thought
plan in
about that.
advance.
But come on, we did like the
I'm kidding. I'm
79th
kidding.
anniversary of D-Day. We never do anything when we're supposed to do it here on the Spy-Fi guys.
Good point. We at least had our Pearl Harbor two Pearl Harbor episodes released right around Pearl Harbor Day,
Yeah, that was the one time we didn't totally screw it up.
but it wasn't on any anniversary. If I remember.
Mm.
Oh well, that's okay. I was here already, so yeah. And I do have some family who's in that Boston area, and I know they all have their own sort of stories
Mm.
about. But no one was in Boston proper, if I recall.
Yeah, that's right. It was pretty wild. And
Yeah,
before we get to the movie, I just want to dispute the tagline. This clearly is not the world's greatest manhunt. Obviously, the search for Osama bin
I
Laden is
was
the
gonna
world's greatest
say.
manhunt. I mean, this might have been America's biggest manhunt.
Maybe
You could
the
make the
greatest
case.
domestic, American domestic manhunt.
Sure.
What about the Unabomber?
I mean, yeah, there's been a lot of them. But wow, a movie tagline that exaggerates? Who would have imagined such a thing?
Well,
Anyway,
have you seen this movie before?
no, I
Because I
haven't.
had not.
Yeah, I mean, when it came out, I was like, it's too soon,
Hmm.
and I never had much interest in seeing it.
Yeah.
But I also knew it was pretty well regarded.
Interesting. Okay, so I definitely confused this for another film at first because there's a movie that came out I think around the same time. Let me double check it. Oh no, it came out earlier called Vantage Point, which is about an assassination of a U.S. president, but it's like told from all these multiple viewpoints, and I
Hmm.
confused, mixed up these two in my head. There's like, did they do like a multiple viewpoint on? And they kind of did, but not really here. Actually, they focus on a few different viewpoints, but not as much as like Vantage Point is kind of like a Rashomon style,
Hmm.
you know, telling
Gotcha.
of us the same thing. But I think that would be another interesting movie to cover for a podcast, but later.
Yeah, so it turns out neither of us saw this movie. One of us thought they might have, but not so
No, I
much.
never saw Vantage Point either, but I just
Oh,
knew that
really?
that was yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so here's the poetry synopsis. I must say, after watching it, I wasn't in a very poetic mood,
Fair,
but
fair.
then inspiration struck later. So here's
Oh,
the
okay.
haiku. Well, I guess you can
Yeah,
decide how
let's hear
much you
it.
like the results. So here's the haiku: Marathon attack, manhunt for bomber brothers.
Hmm.
You can't stop them all.
Hmm. All right, all right. It's pretty
So
good
I
actually.
feel that
Yeah,
kind of covers the movie.
yeah.
And then
That's good.
here's the limerick: Boston went from hooray to foul play when two murderers did have their say. A lockdown did ensue by the heroes in blue, and it went down on Patriots Day.
Okay, you know what? I mean, I was like, for such a somber movie and real life event, how are you going to make a limerick? But you did it. You did a good job.
Thank you.
Kudos.
I
Like
have
you
some
made it.
talent.
You made it respectful, but also still rhyming. But good job. All right, let's get our actual IMDb plot synopses.
Yep. The story of the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing and the aftermath, which includes the citywide manhunt to find the terrorists responsible.
Hmm. All right. Yeah.
Hmm.
To the point, succinct.
That's
So
right.
we start off and we meet Boston PD Sergeant Tommy Saunders, who's on a raid of the sorts. He's looking for a guy. I definitely thought this was going to be like some sort of bait and switch, and he was not actually like looking for a criminal. He was like looking for his daughter or something, like who was out drinking or something. I was like, I didn't know the tone of this film, and considering it's Mark Wahlberg, and I've seen him in comedic stuff. In my mind, the first thing that comes up is him in like that Transformers movie, which I never actually saw, but I think we got a Transformer. That's in my mind, Mark Wahlberg.
To me, it's The Departed, which is probably his
Ah,
greatest role, where he is the comic
I have
relief.
not seen.
And
I see.
oh
Really?
well,
Okay. Well,
you're missing
don't
out.
spoil it for me. I need to see it. I was on a binge of Scorsese mob movies. It's on the
Hmm.
list.
But
But
yeah, so
yes.
this beginning is like the one funny part of the whole movie, pretty much,
Hmm.
except for a odd line here and there.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah. So with that tone, I was like, "Is this a bait and switch? Is this going to be?" But no, he's actually looking for a guy who's like, I don't know what the deal with this is. He got hit over the head with a smoothie. We find out when he means smoothie, he means like an iron.
Yeah, the guy's like an idiot or something, and everyone's got those Boston accents, which is great.
Yeah, oh, the accents. But we find out about Tommy is that basically he's having to pull all these terrible shifts and punishment duties due to some incident in his past. He kicked someone, and so he's having to pull terrible shifts and sort of like punishment duties due to this incident in his past. The commissioner even comes by while they're doing this raid, and Tommy tries to convince him to let Tommy out of duties at the Boston Marathon the next morning. He is denied, but he's told that after he does that, he's out of the doghouse.
So I liked this. It is
Hmm.
similar to the cop last day before retirement, but it's a good explanation for why he's at the marathon, even though he's a
Yes.
detective and will be involved in the manhunt later. So it all checks out. I like that.
Is he a detective or is he still a sergeant? Was he a detective before?
Oh, that's a good question. No, I think he is a sergeant.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. Anyways, we also meet Tommy's wife, Carol, played by Michelle Monaghan, with a terrible Boston accent.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people's accents go in and out in this movie, and she's
Uh,
played by Michelle Monaghan, wife of the heroes.
yeah, but I guess because I'm more familiar with her work that I really noticed it.
Mhm.
So we also meet a bunch of other characters here, including this couple, Patrick and Jessica. Jessica's played by our future Lois Lane, Rachel Brosnahan.
Very nice.
We also have a father and son, Steve and Leo. We meet some MIT students, including Lee, played by Lana Condor, who's been in a bunch of stuff, as well as her love interest, who's MIT officer Sean Collier, or he's not an officer at MIT. Well, he's a police officer who's stationed at MIT.
This is interesting. He does
Yeah.
the move where you don't invite the girl out, you invite her and all her friends
Thanks.
out.
Yeah.
It's so like high school, which is
Well,
pretty
they're in
funny.
school, you know.
I mean, they're not that far removed from high school, so it
No,
makes
no.
sense.
And then we also meet Dun Meng, who's a Chinese immigrant who's played by Jimmy O Yang. This is very different for him for me because he's a stand. I know him as a stand-up comic. I've seen him in movies. Particularly
Mhm.
one Love Hard Christmas movie, great on Netflix. Recommend.
What? That's your go-to for Jimmy Yang's movies? Not Crazy Rich Asians
I forgot he was in Crazy Rich Asians actually.
or Silicon Valley, which I know is not a
I've never
movie.
actually seen Silicon Valley, but I've
Okay.
seen Love Hard more recently. The Crazy Rich Asians I haven't seen since it came out. What I feel like it's almost 10 years now.
Yeah, probably the same time as this movie.
Yeah, but yeah, I've seen Love actually the last two Christmases. I've seen it twice, so yes. So recommend, fun, but yeah, it's a very serious role for him, so it's very different, and but he's good in it.
Mhm.
But then we're also introduced to the Sarnav brothers, Tamerlan and Jokar, also called Jahar.
Nice job taking on those names. Those are tough
Yeah,
names.
yeah,
I just
and we
call them
also
like Big Bro and Little Bro. And
or White Hat or Black Hat.
yeah, that too.
Oh, I do that later. But and then we
Mhm.
also meet Tamerlan's wife, Catherine, played by Melissa Benoist, or however you
Yeah, that's
pronounce her
right.
last name.
I think it's
TV's
Benoist.
Supergirl, Benoist. Yeah,
Yep. Who it took me a while to recognize her without her
I
hair.
saw the trailer and I was like, he looks real familiar. And then I looked at the cast and said, oh, it's Supergirl. That's weird.
That's right.
But there's a lot of good character stuff here. We meet a lot of people very quickly.
Yep. And you know they're going to come together, but how?
Yeah,
Keeps you
yeah.
intrigued.
So we next day we start at the Boston Marathon. Tommy is out there being, crossing guard basically.
So actually, before that, we meet one more character, which is
Oh,
Hugh Jalise, played by J.K. Simmons.
I bring
And
him up later, but I wasn't sure how. I forgot that he
uh,
was in that part too. Yeah.
well, the only thing I want to point out is that when we first meet him, he goes to a Dunkin' Donuts to get his wife
Ah, so
breakfast.
Boston.
Well, it is Boston, but it also feels like a product placement because it's just Dunkin' Donut stuff everywhere.
That is how a Dunkin' Donuts is.
The best product placements are where it works within the context of the
And it
story and it
totally
makes
works
sense.
here because, of course, you're going to be at a Dunkin' if you're in Boston.
Yep.
We started the marathon. Tommy calls his wife to ask for his stronger brace for his bad knee that he, overextended while kicking some guy in the teeth.
Yep.
But yeah, so we see Patrick and Jessica as well as Steve and his son Leo at the finish line. We get to see the first runner cross the finish line. I forgot what his name. I was going to look up what it was, but
Ethiopian runners, I think they
I
said, right?
believe so. Yes, yes.
Yeah, there's also a part where they have remembrance for the Newtown, or no,
I
not
was,
Newtown,
yeah.
Newton, the Newton school shooting. Yeah, which I thought was an interesting choice.
Yeah. Well, I'm assuming that actually happened. Well, not obviously the shooting happened, but I assume that the remembrance happened in real life, and they're at least for this part, they're trying to skew as close as possible to real life events.
Sure, it's just an interesting choice to put in the movie. I wonder if
Hmm.
it's like this is America. You're never too far from a tragedy, no matter where you are.
We'll talk about that more when we get his speech later. But yes, I think so. I think it is definitely
Yeah,
intentional.
the thing with these based on a true stories movies is they're not always necessarily having the same message as fictional ones
Mm-hmm.
because real life doesn't always have a message. Sometimes real life
Yeah.
just is what it is,
Yep.
and this in this case more than most.
We also see the Sarnav brothers with backpacks, and
Hmm.
we see them leave them at certain parts. And then we get the moment that, we're all,
Right. So not for the first time in this movie, it was like a horror movie
yeah,
where you're
yeah.
just waiting for the killer to pop out of the basement.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you see all the normal people looking totally
That's
normal
what I was
and
about to put, especially the ones who were introduced to. I mean, the one with like Steve and his son Leo, that's the one that was like getting me, was like, Oh god, he is right next to them. Do not tell me the kid is gonna die in this.
Well, I mean, did you remember that a kid was killed in the Boston
I
Marathon
did
bombing?
not.
Oh, I remembered that, but I also knew that the kid was 9. So I was like, the
Or
kid's too old to die, fortunately.
okay,
Or too
okay.
young, rather, excuse me.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
did not remember that. So,
Mm,
that one was like, oh, I was just dreading and anticipating. And the thing about this, like, one, did they use real shots from the actual thing here?
yes.
Okay. Like all the security footage feels like it's like, or at least most of it
Mm,
feels like it's real footage.
yeah, it is.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I didn't look it up, but I was like, this a lot of this feels real. But also like the parts where you see Mark Wahlberg, obviously not real footage, but the explosions feel like real explosions, not your Hollywood style fireball explosions. They feel very real. Everything here is really chilling. It's really effective.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too. I thought it was really effective.
Like to just give you that terror, that feel, which accurate, sure. Was I prepared for it? Not really. So it got me.
Yeah. Yeah, it got me too. My girlfriend and I were watching it together, and this movie kind of upset her a little bit. And
Fair
so it
enough,
was very,
fair enough.
yeah,
Yeah. There's well done shots here where like the camera falls down as if it is a person who's caught in the blast. And I
right.
know that that is just an effect that they're doing. They're just having the camera, but it still grips you like that. It's very well
Mm.
done.
It also topples over on some blood,
That's
right?
right. There was
Like,
yeah, yeah.
only a little bit, but still.
hmm
I should say the movie also kind of upset me too, but that's more later.
No, and this part was the most upsetting for me. Like the family is trying to find each other, and like thankfully Tommy finds his wife Carol, and she's
Mm,
okay. And he has another officer bring her home. And at this point, like Tommy is starting to take charge. He's getting medical personnel down to the finish line. We get some ambulances that are starting to get cleared through. We see that some of the couple that we met earlier, Jessica and Patrick, they're separated as they're
mm,
being picked up. Steve separated from his son Leo. That was like terrifying to me. It was just like,
mm.
what if the kid has no identification on him? How are you gonna find that kid later?
Yeah, it's going to be a while before they
That
find each
was
other at
terrifying
best.
to me. Yeah.
Mm,
Someone's bringing over a wheelchair for some of the wounded, and they get run into by the runners. There are still runners who have no idea what's happening here, and they're coming through,
mm. Yeah, I should say, in a little levity, Mark Wahlberg's accent does kind of come back and forth in this part.
which is funny because that's his real accent, isn't it?
Yeah, but he's also been an actor for a long time, so he's
That's true.
probably learned. So,
Yeah.
and I also suspected, mentioned this to my girlfriend too, that I think the reason why the death count was so low was because they
Mm.
had medical like right there, ready to
Mm.
treat
True.
people.
True.
If this
Eh,
were like in the middle of nowhere, it would be a different story, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. So as everyone is cleared out, the FBI arrives with Commissioner Davis, who is played by John Goodman. I don't think I mentioned that before.
Yes. Mhm.
And he arrives with Special Agent in charge, Richard Delorier, who is played by Kevin Bacon.
Yep, immediately recognizable Kevin Bacon, but he did a good
Yeah.
job here.
Oh yeah, he did a good job. Now, there's a sticking point of that. There's still a body, the aforementioned child who died. His body is still right there. It was right. He was right next to one of the bombs, and it's still on the street. Thankfully, it's at least covered. But Tommy is like wanting to move the body. Immediately, Agent Delaria is like, "No, we can't touch him because until forensics gets him, we might there might be things on residue on the body or in his clothes that we can't move."
This is a very interesting conflict, and I quite
Mm-hmm.
liked it. You also had, which is such a cliche in cop movies,
Uh
of
huh.
FBI, we're taking over this investigation. You FBI don't know anything. Us small town cops
Except
do.
it's the
Yes.
kind of the reverse of that.
Oh, yeah.
Because so we have Commissioner Davis like asking Delorier, saying, we need to decide who takes charge,
Hmm.
and Delorier is hesitant as he
Right.
says, like basically, once we label it terrorism, there's no going back, and
Yeah.
it's not jockey necessarily. It is jockeying, but it's like we don't want to make the call if it's wrong.
Yeah, he says it's like if it's terrorism, it means media, it means the president, it
Hmm.
means all this stuff. And
Hmm.
then
Yeah.
later, he's looking at something. He says it's terrorism. We'll take it.
Well, did you figure out what he picked up?
Yeah, it was a screw,
Mm,
right? No,
ball
it's a BB.
bearings.
Oh, a ball bearing. Yeah, that's right.
Which if you see those in explosion, that is a homemade explosive. So that
So
yeah,
I guess it doesn't really. Does it prove it's terrorism or just a nut job with a
it's.
grievance? I guess it's
I
terrorism
mean,
either
okay,
way.
that would still it may not
Yeah.
be religious motivated terrorism, but it's terrorism. Like yeah.
So yeah, either way, it's theirs.
Hmm.
I also did you notice the guy in the lobster costume? Do you have
I
that note?
did.
So we were confused about that because there's a part where he's like, "Get this guy out of here before the bombs go
Yes.
off."
I
So
think
was he
he
like a
was just being
prankster?
annoying. Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
I'm like I don't know what the rules are for the Boston Marathon. Maybe you're not supposed to have costumes while you're running the Boston Marathon.
I think your theory is correct. I think you are allowed to wear costumes, but the guy was like where he wasn't supposed to be for
Yeah.
some reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some more nice levity in a movie that has very little.
So Deloria makes the call. It's terrorism, and so I like to hear. I mean, there was a bit of jockeying, but not too much. At least not at the higher up levels. So Commissioner Davis asked, "All right, what do you need? I need a really big command center." So they set one up in a warehouse. I like this. As they're recreating the scene with like tape, they're bringing over evidence taken from the site, and marking where everything was found, and like setting up. All right, these are where the businesses are along this
Mm.
street. I was like, oh, so this is how you do an actual investigation. This is interesting.
Yeah, I mean it feels Hollywood, but it also is not
I
totally
it,
outside their realm of
yeah.
possibility. So it was very cool.
Also, just a brief talk about Commissioner Davis. So I don't know much about police commissioners, and my main
Mm,
point of reference for police commissioners is Commissioner Gordon.
yes. Yeah, I knew you were gonna say that.
Oh, do you have an idea what a police commissioner actually does? Are they a cop who is it like
I think they're like they run the police department in a city.
okay.
So they're like the equivalent of the CEO, or I guess they're equivalent of like a general of the
Okay.
army.
So the portrayal of Commissioner Gordon is like as being the boss of the police department. That is a correct thing. It's not just,
Yeah, I would say so.
comics. I was not actually sure.
So something that makes real life stories different from fictional stories is that there's lots and lots and lots of characters. So
Hmm.
reading a real life like a book, for example, about this,
Yeah.
I've encountered this problem with there's so many characters and you can't remember who does what.
Yeah.
And this movie, fortunately, kept it to a reasonable
Yeah, it's not like your Tora, or your The Longest
level.
Day, where you have to have. I mean, they do this with like titles for people as they show up, but they only do it for like the head honchos, like the mayor, the police commissioner, FBI, etc. They don't do it for
Right.
every single person, like in The Longest Day or Tora.
Yeah, good luck remembering them as well.
Commissioner Davis talks to the press. He addresses false reports that they had a suspect in custody. I don't remember. There was an ethnicity mentioned, but I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, they said a Saudi national.
Saudi. Okay. I was like, is it Sudan? No, yeah, okay. But he says that was completely false. But then he does ask the public to send in any photos or video that they have. And I like this
Mhm.
part where Deloria is like, oh, he's showing Davis the uploads, and oh, we've crashed because there were that many uploads.
Yeah, a very real life
Hmm.
problem,
Yep, yep.
which I appreciate. Feels very real.
So the FBI analysts have to go through all the photos and videos that were submitted, as well as everything from the security cameras around the area, plus all the confiscated cell phones. So it's a lot of data that they had to scrub through.
So I wonder, and I did not find this in fact versus fiction, but it occurred to me just now, why are the guys at the scene being the ones to comb through everything? Like, isn't that what they have analysts at FBI headquarters for, or the Boston field office?
Yes and no. I mean, I assume some of this may be just for Hollywood, but also I feel like there's that level of connection that you have. If you're
Mm,
there, you can immediately say, I have something, as opposed to sending an email, waiting for someone to read that email, respond to that email, and they can immediately ask you questions.
yeah, we're trying to find somebody on the phone, play a little
Yeah.
telephone tag.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So it's maybe for Hollywood, but that would be my assumption for as to why it would be happening on the site there.
Yep, there you go.
So Tommy, as this is all going through, speaks up and suggests going to the hospital to get witness statements. He talks about how, I just work homicide here, but I know that in homicide, what makes cases stick is witness statements. And so we need to go into the hospitals and talk to all of the victims.
Of which there are many.
Yes, there are many. And Delorier also makes a point that the bomber, because they don't know anything about him at this point, may be at one of the hospitals as well. So they need positive IDs on anyone coming in and out of the hospitals, which is smart.
Hmm. Yeah.
So we go to see the hospitals. We see Jessica and Patrick, who are both injured. They both end up getting legs amputated. I think Jessica has both of them amputated, whereas Patrick just has the right leg,
Yes, that's
left
right.
leg, left leg amputated.
Hmm.
And then Tommy goes to get a witness statement from Steve, the father, um, who is still looking for Leo, his son.
Right. And the body is still there, the body of
Yeah,
the child victim.
yeah,
That was pretty interesting and
yeah.
informative in the movie. I think someone must have screwed up.
You think so?
I think someone was supposed to have sent a team much earlier. It shouldn't have taken them
Uh,
hours and hours and
true,
hours. Yeah.
true.
It's kind of like
Yeah,
also when the runners keep coming through, and I think Mark Wahlberg even says like somebody was supposed to have stopped them and someone didn't.
yeah, yeah. So we see an analyst get the first sighting of one of the bombers. It's a guy in a white hat who, when the explosion happens, he looks away from the explosion, whereas everyone looks towards it.
This was great. This part was great. I really liked it. And then the guy's
Yeah,
like,
oh yeah.
"Sir, check this out." And Kevin Bacon's like, "Play it again."
So as they figure out, all right, where exactly the white hat would have been standing, Delorier grabs Tommy and asks him to walk him through in reverse which cameras would get a sight of White Hat, starting from whichever minute going backwards. And so they do this a couple of times. They get footage of him walking backwards from, like, he's like, all right, thinking, is it the CVS? Is it the, I don't remember what all the specific businesses are. He's like, oh wait, this
Right.
one bar I know just installed some cameras in the back. Those might have it too. Which was like, this is a good idea, using your local police.
Yeah, it explains why Tommy's there and like why
Yeah.
they have to keep coming up with reasons for him to be there. I feel like we've seen other movies like, oh, it's like 13 Days with Kenny. They have to keep explaining
Uh,
why Kenny has to be around.
Interesting. I've never actually seen 13 Days, so yeah. Oh wait,
Yes,
no.
you have. We covered
I'm
it.
thinking of I'm thinking of 13 hours, not 13 days. Yes. Oh, that's right. I forgot about Yeah, yeah.
Good old Kenny.
But yeah, so I like this though. You're using all of the people, you're using resources. You might not necessarily have that knowledge of every street there, but your beat cops will.
Mm.
And so they work backwards and until they finally get a photo of White Hat next to another guy in a black hat with sunglasses.
And I do kind of remember this picture being released. The
Yeah.
one.
Like some of this started to come back to me too.
Mhm.
But apparently, this image, even though it looks, relatively clear, it's too grainy and they can't get facial rec on it.
Yeah, well, facial recognition was still early
I mean,
technology.
yeah, 10 years ago or 11 years ago. So yeah, Tommy finally goes home and there's a bunch of friends and neighbors who potentially family who are there and they're all like demanding answers from Tommy. Shouts at them all to get out in much more
Mm.
colorful language.
Yeah, much more Bostonian language. But it all, to be fair to them, like nobody knows anything, and they know that
True.
he was
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I get both sides, but I also like he saw things there, and like, so his wife is Carol, is consoling him. Like, he's clearly shaken up by what he saw, but he's also very shaken up by the fact that Carol could have been hurt, and that it would have been his fault because he asked her to come down there, and she
Right.
wouldn't have been there if not for him asking to bring his brace.
Mhm. Yeah, this is Mark Wahlberg's big acting Oscar scene. I don't mean to be cynical about it. He did do a good job,
Yeah.
and it goes to show that. I guess I don't know if we want to talk about this now or if we'll talk about it later. Do you think in like 50 years people are going to remember the Boston Marathon bombing? Because
Um.
unfortunately or unfortunately, depending on your point of view, the death count was low. It was a
Yeah.
relatively low level terrorist attack.
Considering the fact, and I don't that like I don't actually like that I didn't even remember the names of the bombers, or
Mhm.
like I only had a vague recollection. I think maybe not. I think in 50 years,
Yeah.
yeah, it'll be a footnote.
I know it's troubling. I read a book recently about the bombing of the Los Angeles Times building by like pro-union
Huh.
criminals, and it
Uh-huh.
took place in 1910. To be fair, it took place in
Oh,
1910.
okay. All right. Yeah.
So, before we had 4K ultra video, but
Uh-huh.
75 people were killed, and like nobody knows about it, right? It's a footnote
Okay.
of history at
Wait, you said
best.
75 people?
Yes.
Even think about like the Tulsa Race Massacre.
Mhm.
Not a lot of people knew about that, honestly, until it was in the Watchmen TV show.
Well, I mean, that's why you have movies like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe because there is this movie, more people remember.
I hope so. But where I'm going with this scene, though, is like, yeah, only 3 people were killed, which on the
Hmm.
scale of terrorism is pretty low. But
Right.
over almost 300 were wounded, and a
Hmm.
wound is bad if you lose a
Yeah.
limb, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
then how many more people were just like Tommy?
Who were just traumatized or shell shocked. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, not all the
I
not all the injuries
or well,
are
let
visible.
me rephrase my answer to this.
Mhm.
If you're from Boston, you'll remember it in 50 years.
Well, that was something else that kind of upset me about the movie. Is
Okay.
I remember the country moved on pretty fast
Mm.
from
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But Boston didn't.
No.
At least I hope they didn't. I don't think they did. But the rest of us, yeah.
2013, thinking about back to that time. Well, I don't know. I mean, at this point, the years are blending together, and like our generation just lived through
Mhm.
so much.
I also think, to be fair, they got the guys like
True.
immediately. If they hadn't, maybe it would have been a different story.
So back at the command center, Commissioner Davis is demanding that Delorier release the photos they have of the bombers, so that they can start getting information about who these people might be. But Delorier is resistant. Tommy even
Mhm.
brings up that, this is Boston, and Boston, if you release those photos, we will get people are going to hell.
Another really good dilemma. You could
Hmm.
totally see both sides of the case. Like,
Hmm.
what do you think, Christian? What would you have done?
Oh, that's a great question. If I'm in that position, oof, I don't know.
Assuming
What
Fox News doesn't force your
I was
hand,
gonna
like
say,
what
yeah,
happened in the
yeah,
movie.
yeah, yeah. Gut instinct, I would have waited.
Uh huh. Interesting.
Yeah, I think
Interesting.
so. Yeah, gun to my head. Which is a terrible
Mm.
phrase. Yeah, I think that's what I would have waited.
So that's interesting. I would have released them. So as usual, we
Interesting.
disagree. I don't know
I
about
mean,
as
hey,
usual.
but hey, that's why we would work well together. Is that we would have that conversation, and hopefully come to some sort of agreement of what to. Our hand would get forced by Fox News, of course.
So my logic, though, is
Yeah.
that whatever like psychological benefit the bombers would gain by
Hmm.
knowing the authorities don't know who they are
Yeah.
would be offset by the gain you could get by having people be able to identify them, which is
Fair.
exactly
Okay.
what
Yeah.
happens
Yeah.
in the movie and in real life too.
But if you know that if they're looking for you specifically, you go to ground, you hide.
Yeah, but if they're smart, they're going to ground anyway. But they're not smart,
But are
as it
they not?
turns
Are they
out.
smart? We don't know that they're smart. They could be idiot. I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I said to my girlfriend, like, they should be in a truck headed for Canada right now, but they're not.
so yeah. Well, I think we've basically expressed the viewpoints of both Deloria and Davis here, which was great. But yeah. So as we keep referring to, Fox News forces Deloria's hand,
Mm,
and is yeah I think the exact same analyst who found the first image of White Hat is the same guy
mhm.
who's on the phone goes and is told that yeah, Fox News has the photos and wants everything that the FBI has, or they'll go live. Was it like 20 minutes or an hour?
No, they said 20 minutes,
It
which
was
was
20 minutes. I was
ridiculous.
like, I'm saying an hour. My notes like I feel like it was 20 minutes with the
Yeah.
photos, with or without any FBI commentary. So now, yeah, now they have to do it. They have a press conference where they show the photos and ask for any information. So the Tsarnaev brothers see the newscast, and Jahar is getting text from one of his dorm mates who's saying that this photo looks exactly like him.
Yeah, these guys were funny. It's like, dude, this guy looks just like you.
Other dorm mates come over, talk to the one roommate, and they're like, dude, you see that? It looks like that definitely looked like him. And then they sort of move on pretty quickly, and they're just start now they're looking for weed.
I don't think these guys were done any favors by their portrayal in the movie.
So they look in Jahar's backpack, and when they do, they find the fireworks and ball bearings, and which very suspicious. But they decide, oh, not my problem. We'll put it back in. Just pretend we didn't see anything.
Yeah, their weed-addled brains were actually able to put together that it is in fact bomb shit, as they said themselves. But I also wonder if they're like, "Hey, man, we don't need that heat with our weed smoking. We're not going to get involved."
Oh man. So we see the brothers packing up their bomb materials, and they're going to try to obtain another gun. So they see the police car on the MIT campus with Officer Sean Collier in it.
This was legit like a horror movie.
Yeah,
This part.
jeez. Yeah, they shoot him, try to grab his gun, but he keeps resisting. They shoot him multiple times. I did not count how many times, but it was a lot of times.
Yeah, it was probably like 5 times. Unfortunately, it was a pullback. The camera pulled back when they
Yeah,
shot him a bunch of
hopefully.
times because it was pretty gruesome. Mhm. And again, these guys are not hardened jihadists who like know what they're doing, clearly.
No, if I read this the way we're supposed to see it correctly, they didn't even end up getting the gun.
No, that's correct. That's
Yeah,
correct.
okay. So after that, they run, and then we catch up with our friend Dunmeng, played by Jimmy O Yang.
The best
Uh,
character in the movie. He's also been having a little romance with this girl who works at
yeah, the girl from the takeout place. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So that's nice.
Yeah, I was happy for him. Then he gets carjacked by the brothers.
I like when the movie slows down, even though I'm not really the biggest fan of horror movies, and this
Uh-huh.
is very much like a horror movie. Actually,
Oh,
you know what it's like?
jeez.
It's like Zodiac. Have you seen Zodiac
I have not seen Zodiac.
by
No.
Fincher? So
Hmm.
yeah, there's like things where like someone will be minding their own business and then someone just comes over and
Oof,
kills them. Yeah.
jeez. Yeah, so they carjack him, but they also keep him in the car as they drive him around,
Mhm.
and they threaten him and also tell him that 9/11 was an inside job.
I did like the part where they're like, "Are you just saying that because you believe it, or are you saying that so he won't kill you?" I was like,
Mhm.
"Hmm, what's the right answer to that question?"
Yeah.
I don't even. Do you remember how he gets out of it? I think they just changed the subject or
I
something.
think, yeah,
He just
yeah,
says it
they
again,
just
like, "Oh man, you got a lot to learn here, bro. How the
uh-huh.
world
Oh,
really
I think
works."
he says like I don't know actually.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're at a gas station, and Tamerlan is, filling up the tank, and Jahar goes to get snacks. And as this
Mhm.
is going on, Dunmeng is looking. All right, sees that the gun is in the door and is not easy to get to. He can't
Mhm.
immediately get shot. He takes a risk, opens the door, and runs
This part
like
was
hell.
crazy. It was
Oh
crazy, and
man.
he also takes his seatbelt off. Like I don't know about you, but whenever I need to remove my seatbelt in a hurry, it never goes. I was sure that was what was going to happen.
I didn't think about
It
that. I did.
it like
Yeah,
jams or something. Yeah.
yeah. But he manages to get out. He runs. He gets to a different convenience store, has them call the police.
Mm.
Now, Tommy happens to be in the area. This area is Watertown, which is the area where J.K. Simmons is a sergeant.
Yeah, we were waiting to see how Watertown was going to come back into the story, as
Hmm.
I knew that it would.
But yeah, so Tommy hears the dispatch and goes over and talks to Dunmeng. And Dunmeng tells him, in through his accent, that the brothers said that they were the marathon bombers. As soon
Yeah,
as Tommy
so
hears that, he's like, "What?"
it's like, oh my god, it's all coming together. This is like wild. Dunming's the hero. He
Yeah.
deserves the key to the city.
And he also has his GPS tracking unit memorized.
What a Chad.
Yeah. Yeah. So he gives that to Tommy, who Tommy, says, "Oh, you were very brave for getting away from these, doing what you did, getting away from these guys." And
Yeah, he is.
the Bank says, "Get those fucking assholes."
Hmm.
So the brothers now need a new plan since they obviously know that the car will be identified. So they need to go back to using their own car and to ditch the Mercedes.
This is like ridiculous.
Yeah,
Totally
yeah.
ridiculous.
Two Watertown squad cars pick up the Mercedes, and this scene is crazy.
Another crazy one, yeah.
Like as soon as they drive up, they are shot at by uh, the brothers, and then they start throwing explosives at these cars.
Mhm.
And it seemed real like this part seemed the explosion seemed more Hollywood here.
I actually didn't research the details of this gunfight for
Okay.
Spy Fact versus Fiction. I do think the huge explosions
Yeah.
is Hollywood, but my understanding from reading
Uh-huh.
is they threw an explosive device and it would like disable a cop car. Like
Mm.
it didn't like blow up, like throw it into the air, but it did stop moving.
I did, and I didn't read this for Spy Factor Suspicion. I was just reading because I was curious.
Mm,
Accounts from some of the cops who were there. There were
mm,
smaller, like more firework style explosives, and you
mm,
know those were just more distracting. But there was one that was as big as like a cooking pot, and that one
mm.
like caused basically just white flash that you couldn't see anything.
Wow. So even
Yeah.
more than in the movie. So yeah, this part is like a real life Grand Theft Auto game.
Right. Yeah. So like I was saying, like it seems very Hollywood, but like it kind of
Yeah.
happened,
So I was like, how are they going to get out of this? Because you can't fight the cops. Like you can get in a gun, but they'll just surround you, and
which is
then
what
then it's just
happens.
over. Which is yeah, but then carry
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
So that's when we get J.K. Simmons who's he like done after his shift, but hears it over the radio. He comes and joins the fight, manages to flank the brothers, and he
Mhm.
manages to shoot Tamerlan in the leg, like under the car.
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna go flank them by myself. Why by yourself? Just take a couple guys with you.
I mean, at that point, there's only the three of them still.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but
Yeah,
there's more people coming in,
they
which
are
is
coming
nice to
in,
see.
but at that point, it's just like three of them, or maybe four at that point. Not a lot.
Mm, yeah.
So Tamerlan tells Jakar, go to New York, take everything with you, or I'll cover you, basically. And so he goes
Mhm.
on into the street, guns blazing, so that Jahar can get away. He gets tackled by J.K. Simmons and has a fight with him.
Yeah.
And then he gets run over by his brother, which is
Yeah.
brutal.
He deserves it. And
Uh,
it was also crazy that the brother just keeps driving and they just keep shooting him, but he
yeah,
just keeps going and actually gets away. I was like, how does he get away?
yeah, I was shocked that I was sure that one of the barricades, 'cause at this point there's a lot of cops now, that one of
Mm.
the barricades of cops would stop it, but no, like apparently Dunmang's Mercedes, real good car,
Speaking of product placement, though
right?
I think like the shooting the tires thing, that might be Hollywood too, I
I
suspect.
think so because you don't see them try to do it, or at least none successfully.
Yeah, exactly.
Where are their, their tire strips? They're like spike strips.
I suspect this is my
Yeah,
imagination that not every cop car like comes with one. They probably have to be like,
probably this
"Oh,
is probably true.
yeah, we're doing an interception. Go to the headquarters,
Yeah,
sign out a form
yeah,
for the strip, and then you get it."
you are very much right. Yeah.
Thanks. But he drives right through the middle of the cops. I was afraid they were going to hit each other because they're both
Well,
shooting at. Well, carry on.
speaking of that, so Tommy arrives and he sees everything's going on, and he jumps in a black truck with another officer to
Yeah,
pursue Jahar, and he's caught by friendly fire because these are cops who just arrived who only know that the description of the vehicle is a black truck, and so they see that speeding away. And thankfully, none of the cops in that car get shot, but still.
yeah. That also reminds me. I thought it was interesting that J.K. Simmons shot first and didn't say like you're under arrest or something like
Hmm.
that.
I mean, at this point, the guys are throwing explosives.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, maybe they couldn't even hear him because there's
Hmm.
so much noise. But yeah.
But yeah, so through all of that, Jahar manages to get away.
Mhm,
And Tamerlan is taken to the hospital. He's in real bad shape. He is
mm.
coding, and the doctors are trying to resuscitate him. But as they're trying, an FBI comes to fingerprint him and say, "Oh, okay, you need to stop everything for a second. I need to get this."
Yeah,
And so
he
he
throws
finger,
his weight around.
yeah. So back at the command center, the mayor makes the call to lock down Boston. So all businesses are closed. Everyone has to remain in their houses as the police search for Jahar.
We do hear a little bit about the controversy.
Hmm.
I remember this very much was part of the national conversation.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Can you just force a whole city to stay in their homes? So,
Hmm.
someone says, like, what about civil rights? And the movie really does not go into it. And
No,
I
they
guess you
don't.
decide whether or not you like that or not. It's almost funny how like quaint this is, because then only a few years later, the whole country was locked down.
Right,
And
right, yep.
yeah.
And they
Mm.
also detect a signal from Jahar's phone in the dorm, and his dorm dorm mates get detained.
I like the part where the two co-eds like face down on the SWAT team. That was funny.
And yeah, I did enjoy. That was the moment of levity where they're just like shocked, like, and like the one SWAT guy is like motioning, get out, move now. They're just like
What?
stunned, and
They're like, we're not involved.
they managed to pick up the rest of them, but they realize that Jahar is not there.
Mm.
And then an interrogator from Washington arrives to talk to Catherine to try to get any information they can.
Second best character in the movie. She's like
They
amazing.
say from Washington, CIA, or
Huh?
who do you think this person is?
Oh yeah, because they never say who they are.
Yeah,
Presumably CIA then. I mean, if they were
yeah.
FBI, they would just be able to say that. They wouldn't have to
That's
play
what. Yeah,
coy.
like they're very mysterious about it. So I assume CIA, maybe enhanced interrogation unit, something like that. Yeah. Although they don't do any sort of waterboarding, anything like that. Well, U.S.
Well, no.
soil.
But yeah, like Veronica knows everything about Katie. She knows exactly what to do to make her mad.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, I was born in a tent, you privileged white girl.
Yep. She's also wearing a head covering and greets Catherine in with the Muslim greeting.
Which turns out to be a bluff. She's not actually Muslim. Another reason why
Or
she's
is
great.
she? I don't know,
Well,
actually.
I guess she might be Muslim, but she doesn't wear the headscarf normally because she immediately
Yeah.
takes it off when the
Yeah.
interrogation's over.
But she doesn't actually get anything usable out of Catherine.
I like the part where she showed the picture. Maybe this is a little sadistic, but the part where she showed the dead husband picture to
Yep.
Katie.
Yeah, that was brutal.
But Katie's a true believer, so it
Yeah.
doesn't work.
But yeah, she doesn't reveal if there were more bombs or where Jahar might have gone. So as Boston is locked down, we see Tommy, going door to door, talking to people or telling them to stay inside. And he hears from a couple who think that Jahar might be hiding in their boat.
So this came back to me. I thought
Yeah?
was found in like a tub. I remember he was found in some kind of object, kind of
Oh,
like
I did
that, like
not remember
hiding.
this. Uh-huh.
Yeah, hiding in some kind of object that's like I can't describe
Some
it.
sort of
Like a
outdoor.
container, some kind of outdoor container. Then, yeah, then they're like, well, actually, getting someone out of a boat is not as straightforward as it would seem.
Yeah. Ami goes to check it out, and he's got, another cop with him, and he is just able to see Jahar through the covering in the boat, but, they're not sure it's booby trapped, so they call it in. As he's looking in, more cops arrive, and, like, they run their sirens, and it's, like, spooking Tommy.
It was like our last horror movie, like jump scare, where
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
like, and then the siren scares him. It's almost like you expect a zombie to pop out of the boat.
Yeah. Yeah. More cops arrive, and like as a bunch of them are there, movement is detected in the boat, and everyone shoots. That is
Yeah, it's not like full
crazy.
perforation, but it's
Yeah,
yeah, they certainly know they're there now.
and they're all on different frequencies, so no one can actually communicate with each other.
Again, someone screwed up, which
Yeah,
will
yeah.
happen.
But they call a ceasefire. Local PD is told to stand down. And at this point, FBI hostage rescue takes charge, and shoots. I didn't actually know what they're shooting into there.
So I didn't look this up for fact versus fiction, but I think they're
Yeah.
called magnesium rounds,
Ah, okay. Yep. Yeah. That makes
and they make
sense.
smoke, and I think that's it. So I guess the idea is
Smoke.
that
I think smoke and lights. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
mm,
But I did like the thermal imaging of you could see where he was and seeing. But yeah,
mm,
they get him to surrender, and he
peacefully.
peacefully. And this is where you get more intercut of like real world I assume this is real world photos of
Yeah,
when Jahar actually surrendered.
you assume correctly. Yes.
And this is where we get the heartwarming scenes, Boston Strong, all of the people
Mm,
cheering for the police.
mm,
We finally get Patrick and Jessica reunited. We also see Steve is reunited with his son Leo. We
mm,
get David Ortiz, aka Big Papi from the Red Sox. And the
mm.
Boston PD is invited to a baseball game to honor them. Tommy gets to shake Big Papi's hand, and I assume at a certain point, it switches from Big Papi like acting to his real life big speech.
Presumably, yeah. I don't think they would have refilmed it for the movie.
Yeah.
So I think you're correct.
And then we end sort of with interviews with the real life Jessica's and Patrick, as well as Steve, Commissioner Davies, FBI Special Agent. What was his name?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't
Delorier.
written down.
Yeah,
Yeah, Delorier. Mhm.
yeah. As well as a video from Dunmang.
That was wild that he like still lives in Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was wild.
Yeah, and then we get the ending text where we find that Jahar was sentenced to death by lethal injection and was awaiting his appeal in federal prison, and that his 3 college friends were arrested for obstructing the bombing investigation, and that the authorities
Mhm.
are continuing to seek information regarding Catherine Russell's possible involvement with the bombing.
I think she's gonna get away with it though at this
Uh,
point.
yeah, yeah. But with
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
our movie ends.
Yeah, say hi to Guantanamo Bay for us,
Mhm.
Katie. Yeah, they also shout out they show the couple running the marathon
Oh yeah, that's
with
right.
their
Yeah,
with
yeah.
their prosthetic
It
legs.
was just Patrick, not Jessica. She was waiting for him at the
Oh,
finish line. Yeah.
oh, okay, okay. And then also the victims
Oh yes, oh yes. They
of
honor
the bombing.
all 3 victims. Yeah, 3 victims, and also the officer,
Sean
Sean.
Collier, yeah.
So what do we have? Well, I have one brief thing for spy fact versus fiction,
Sure. Why
and
don't you go first then? Yeah.
this is about open source intelligence, which you may go into more detail about. No? All right. So, the investigation is a good example of what's known as open source intelligence, or OSINT. Now, this comes
Mhm.
from Wikipedia. It's the collection and analysis of data gathered from open sources to produce actionable intelligence. So, open sources include media such as print, newspaper, magazines, radio, and television, the internet, public government data, professional and academic publications, and commercial data such as commercial imagery and databases. So when they're running through all the security cameras as well as all the submitted stuff from people, probably Facebook posts, all that sort of stuff, that is OSINT, or open source intelligence.
Yeah, none of it's secret. Any
Mm-hmm.
person could find it, which we'll need to still talk about that more later.
Yep, yep. So that's what I've got for spy fact versus spy fiction.
So, do you remember in D-Day Girls, the D-Day Girls, Microdot, in World
Mm-hmm.
War II, they asked British people to send in pictures of the French coastline
Yeah,
from
yeah.
tourist photos. So,
Or we talk about what was it? It was in Pearl Harbor briefly, wasn't it? There was the guy who was taking photos, or the
mhm,
guy who was calling up the other Japanese, was it dentist or something, asking him
yeah, that's
about
right.
things. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
totally. All right. So, I went to historyversushollywood.com.
All right.
Patriots Day article. For such a mainstream movie like this, I knew there would be people who would
Oh, I'm
do the work
sure.
for him,
Yeah.
and they did. So, is Mark Wahlberg's character Tommy Sanders based on a real person? No, he is
No,
not.
no. He is like your Danny and Ray from Pearl Harbor. He's your
Mm,
point of view character for this. I remember hearing that there were Bostonians who were upset about this, that they created this character, and when there were so many real life people who were involved. Although there was no single person who was involved with every aspect of the investigation like Tommy was.
yeah, exactly. They did this also with Chernobyl a lot. Like the
Oh yeah.
scientist in
Oh, okay.
Chernobyl, she's like 30 people put into one
Ah.
person.
Okay. Yeah.
So, what were the casualties for the Boston Marathon bombing? 3 people were killed,
Mm-hmm.
264 were wounded,
Oh.
17 underwent amputations. So, did the movie get the details of the bombing and the manhunt right? Yes, they did. Aside
Okay.
from Tommy Saunders, of course.
Right.
So, the shootout is correct. The older brother was shot 8 times in the firefight and then was
Oof.
run over by his younger
Uh-huh.
brother.
Oof.
He did die in the hospital. Transit police officer Richard Donahue was hit in the groin by a ricocheting bullet, suffered severe blood loss, but survived.
Oh wow.
Yeah, 28-year-old Boston police officer Dennis DJ Simmons, not shown in the movie, was wounded and passed
Uh-huh.
away from his injuries almost a year later. So
Ah.
if you go to the Boston Marathon bombing, he is listed as
He's
one of the
one of the
victims.
fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was there really a debate over making the images of the suspects public? Yes, there was.
Okay.
Deval Patrick said there was a robust debate about making the images public. At that point, there had been at least one person misidentified by a newspaper.
I was surprised they never went in, because I remember that. I didn't remember the details, but I remember there was a misidentified person. Or I guess, was that the Saudi national that they were? No, that was not related. Or was it? I don't know. Tell me.
I'm surprised the movie didn't talk about Reddit finding the Boston bombers.
Right.
Do
That.
you remember this?
I do remember that.
Yeah, so Reddit, the social media site, got involved. As you're probably not surprised to hear, they made the situation worse. They identified someone named Sunil Tripathi, so he's
Uh-huh.
Indian. He's a Brown University student.
Uh-huh.
I don't know whether he's American or Indian American or what,
Mhm.
but he had actually committed suicide
Oh,
before the
jeez.
bombing even took place.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, so they fucked with
Wow,
his
that was
family.
very wrong.
Yeah, a very embarrassing moment for Reddit.
Wow.
And I can't really blame the movie for not, though it did contribute to the whole swirl of
Yeah.
events.
Okay. Okay.
That was pretty
Interesting.
wild. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a vague recollection of Reddit being involved, and I misidentified. I didn't realize they got it that wrong.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And they also certainly didn't help.
Yeah.
So, did Catherine Russell, the widow of Tamerlan, know about the attack beforehand? She says she doesn't. The
Uh-huh.
producer of the movie, named Michael Radutsky, defended the movie's stance, stating that multiple sources shared with him information gathered through Russell's interrogation, even though the transcripts haven't been released.
Hmm.
She's never been charged with a crime, but the
Mhm.
director Peter Berg of the movie questioned how she could live with them and not realize what they were up to.
Yeah, especially if the orders were as close as depicted in the film. There's no way
Yeah,
she
exactly.
couldn't have known.
In real life, computer expert Mark Spencer testified at his trial that her computer revealed she had done searches that included phrases like rewards for the wife of a
I
mujahideen
did see that. Yeah.
and if your husband becomes a shaheed, what are the rewards for you? These were done more than a year before the bombing.
Ugh.
Something a little happier. Did slain police officer Sean Collier really have a budding romance with an MIT student? No,
Oh.
that's entirely made up.
Okay.
Did carjacking victim Don Meng really have the GPS number of his SUV memorized?
Yeah.
Yes, he
Wow.
did.
Did he have a romance?
They don't mention that. The
Oh.
article doesn't mention that.
But if I recall, I've seen photos. Like I feel like one of the photos that was in like the montage with him has him with a girl. So hopefully, fingers crossed, he's a
It was
happy
the
guy.
same one. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're right. I remember that photo. That's true. So he did actually memorize the tracking number of the GPS. If he hadn't given the number to police, they may never have been able to track down the stolen SUV before the bombers
Wow.
reached Times Square.
Good job done, Meng.
Like in the movie, the reason why they got him was because he needed to send a text message and he pulled off the road in order to send it rather than send it while he was driving.
Uh,
What a guy. He said that his time with the bombers is accurately depicted in the film, right down to
huh?
asking if there was a jack in the car that could be used to play an iPod.
Oh, that's right. Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Did
the real life Dunmeng is in the movie, if I recall.
Yeah, they interview him.
No, I
That's
mean
right.
like as a cameo.
I didn't see that.
Has a cameo appearance inside a pizza restaurant, and then the
Hmm.
real life David Henneberry, who I don't actually remember that character, was outside for a short time in a house porch during the search for the bomber.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
So then finally, did J.K. Simmons' character really tackle Tamerlan? Yes, he did. And did
Huh.
officers really fire at a police vehicle as it left the scene? Yes, they did.
Oh, wow.
So the movie is like pretty accurate, I
Minus
must say.
Mark Wahlberg. Yeah.
Sure, but that's
Hey,
fine.
yeah, yeah.
All right. So next we have our favorite quotes. Yes, I can go first.
Sure. What do you got?
Jessica says, "Let's get drunk," which was funny. I've never heard that before. I guess this would be like
Yeah.
drunk lunch.
Yeah.
Uh,
Or junk brunch.
Drunk brunch, yeah. Like, the scene where he comes home and it's all emotional. He says, "Are you fucking eating Cheerios on my couch?" Mark Wahlberg gets all the funny
uh,
lines. He meets
uh,
Kevin Bacon. He says, "Whatever it is, I didn't do anything." Seems like not something you wanted to say to law enforcement. I did
yeah.
like Dent saying, "Go catch those motherfuckers." I'm not going to try to say it in
Uh-huh.
his accent. It was
No,
amazing.
please don't.
Finally, Veronica saying, "You ain't got shit, sweetheart."
Surprisingly, I think we both only have one quote with an F word in it.
Yeah,
You got the
considering it's
one.
Boston.
Yeah. I've got, when looking through Tamerlan's computer, he's got more porn than Osama bin Laden. Didn't realize Osama bin Laden had that much porn.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, I'm surprised. Oh, they didn't talk about it in Zero Dark
It
30,
did
but
not.
he infamously did. Yes.
FBI hostage rescue team takes over. There's the officer on the roof who the snipers tell her, we're with the FBI. You can stand down now. And she's like, FBI? Boston FBI? No, man, we're from Quantico. Well, I'm from Framingham, Massachusetts, and this is my spot. I ain't fucking leaving.
Yeah, and they're just like, okay,
Glad to have you with us, ma'am.
yeah, they can't do anything. Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
then
One more at the end. I hope I don't steal it. When one of the cops says that boat ain't gonna float.
no, that's mine. He
Oh
says, "I'll
shit,
tell you that boat ain't gonna float." Yeah.
Mr. Clever.
But lastly, I've got from Commissioner Davies talking to Tommy. There he is, General Patton in a neon vest.
Hmm. Always nice to see someone making fun of Mark Wahlberg.
All right, that's what I've got.
All right, so now it is time for our ratings on a scale of 1 to 10 martinis, 1 being Avengers 1998 and 10 being even better than No Time to Die or Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. I should probably just pick one.
Let's
How
go
would we
with
rate
Ghost
Patriots
Protocol.
Day? Let's go with
Okay.
the Ghost Protocol, of course.
Yeah, that one's less controversial.
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to have a lot to say about this.
Okay, let me hear it. I'm curious.
I have a lot of thoughts. This movie made me think a lot, it made me feel a lot. I
Uh
don't
huh.
really like that. So
Okay.
it was very real.
Hmm.
The bombing was very scary. The gunfights were very good. The search was very good. It was like scary and upsetting and very effective, like you said. So that's the good stuff. Bad stuff is they laid the conservative messaging on pretty thick. Like we didn't talk
Hmm.
about this,
Yeah.
but there's a
Okay.
whole speech. Someone makes a speech where it's like, we're the forces of light and they're the forces of darkness.
Right.
So nobody dislikes jihadist terrorists more than me, but they lay it on so thick. It's like
Yeah.
we get it. You don't need to like tell us the message of the movie, okay? These guys' actions speak for themselves.
Hmm.
So that was a little bit much. Also, while we're getting
Oh.
political here, the
All right.
movie is very pro cop, makes the cops look amazing.
Yeah.
And at least in the circles we run in, being pro cop isn't super popular right now. Now, I
Hmm.
don't really subscribe to that much as most people, but I'm not going to pretend like the criticisms of our city's police forces are totally wrong either.
True.
So
True.
again, the movie being like they're heroes, they're amazing. Yeah, the ones who gave their lives, and most of them I'm sure are fine. But again, it was just like I said, laying it on thick.
Counterpoint to that, and not that I believe either wrongly, but they do make that point that, and I think it's in the interviews afterwards, where they say how remarkable it was for people to be cheering for the cops, and then they say like, when's the last time you saw everyone applauding for cops in Boston?
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, so I agree with all the criticisms. I agree with all the studies. They're all true, but these guys do put their lives on the line for
Yeah,
us every
yeah,
day.
yeah, yeah.
That's just the reality. So
Mm-hmm.
getting back to the movie,
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was very effective and I never want to watch it again. Don't watch it. It was amazing. I also will give it an extra point for being very accurate. As
Mm-hmm.
you know, that's something that's important to me. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.
All right.
Again, don't watch it, but it is good.
Interesting. Interesting that you give it an 8 and say don't watch it.
I don't like movies that are so dark.
I mean, obviously, I found it very, like I said, I found it very effective, especially that that bombing scene.
Mm,
And I thought that they did a really good job with investigation. And like people might ask, well, how is this a spy movie? It is that open source intelligence. It is that investigation. That's where
mm.
the intelligence part comes in.
Yes, thank you for reiterating that.
Yes, yes. It's yeah, showing that investigation and how they do it, especially obviously interrogation as well as a part of espionage. So we have that in
Mm,
there as well. I thought this movie is well done. Like I was skeptical going in because it's Mark Wahlberg. It is Peter Berg. You know what other movie that had Mark Wahlberg and Peter Berg that we've both seen and we've probably forgotten? Mile
uh,
22.
what's that? I haven't seen
Ex-
that. What is that?
you
Oh wait,
have
yes, we have. That was that like kind of shitty action movie.
exactly. You know what else that Peter Berg has directed? Battleship. The only
Ooh.
second movie in the last 15 years that I've actually fallen asleep in the theaters.
Well, I'm glad it didn't sink his career. No pun intended.
Like I was very skeptical going in, and I was, I had no idea what the tone would be. I know the quality would be. Somehow, they made a really good movie in terms of like accuracy, in terms of the emotion, the feeling. They may have laid it on a little thick at the end when you got the actual interviews from people. That's when it started becoming feeling like a documentary now.
Mm.
I mean, I appreciated it, but it was a tonal shift at that point. With that moment, and I'm sure actually the moment is probably Right when Big Papi walks onto that field, that's when everything from that point forward is real footage.
Right.
And they have the interviews with all the real life survivors and people who are involved with it. But even giving that, it was very effective. I would say if you are interested in the bombings and maybe either if you have a connection with Boston or some reason that you would want to find out more about this, I would say watch this. And I would say, yeah, it just surprisingly good film for me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it. I'm wavering between the 8 and the 8.5. I'm gonna go with the 8.5. I thought it was very well done.
Yeah. I agree. That's very consistent with us.
You said and I said, the Mark Wahlberg, Tommy Saunders character is completely made up. It is not as distracting as the Rafe and Danny and Evelyn from Pearl Harbor being the central characters in a movie about Pearl Harbor. He does happen to be at every single event that happens, but it's not as distracting as that. His Oscar speech with the wife,
Right.
and then his other speech with his coworker that we didn't really actually even go over.
Yeah, exactly. It's also not as confusing as Kenny being in every major event during the Cuban Missile Crisis in a movie that's supposed to be about JFK and RFK.
Aside from that, shockingly accurate and well done. Yeah.
Great. Well, yeah. Thanks for picking it. It was different and good.
Yeah.
And very, very much up my alley, even if it was hard to watch.
Well, thank you all for listening. You can find us on social media at the Spy-Fi Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Yes, that's right, Twitter, not X. And you can find our merch store on redbubble.com. Until next time, I've been Christian.
And I'm Zach.
And we are the Spy-Fi Guys, signing off. Thank you for listening to the Spy-Fi Guys. If you enjoyed our podcast, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. The theme song from this podcast is Mistake the Getaway by Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Films, books, and television shows reviewed by our podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended.
This is a personal podcast. Any views, statements, or opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the participants. They do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the participants may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated. Any views or opinions are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, or individual.
You can find our podcast on social media at The Spy-Fi Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.